in high school, when I got out of high school, I was a +2 handicap. So if the par was 72, I'd shoot a 70.
Wow.
I had an excellent golf coach. And by the way, my uncle was Tony Lima, who'd won the British Open and was, at that time, he died in 1966. But in 1964, he was the #1 player on the Pro Tour.
Wow.
So I had a chance
awesome.
to play golf and learn from some great people. And it was humbled. I mean, I have to tell you, one of the stories was in my freshman year of high school, he came and got me out of school and said, look, we're going to go down to play golf at Pebble Beach to practice for the clam bake, because it's called the Bing Crosby clam bake at that time. So
now, Pebble Beach is that's a pretty cool course.
Oh yeah, yeah, no question. So and I just won the California State Junior Amateur at that course like 2 weeks before.
Wow.
So I get in the car I get out of school, there's 4 people in the car. So who's sitting in the car? You've got Ken Venturi, you've got Jack Nicklaus, and you've got Chichi Rodriguez.
Holy cow. And Chichi's my favorite golfer growing up. That was my guy right there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Crazy guy. And this is no joke. And you go down, and I'm sitting here going, I'm going to play golf with these guys, right? And we had 3 days of great golf. I have to tell you, I can say I just held my own because I'm playing with some of the best golfers in the world. But I think that what I'm trying to point out is that Tony was a Marine, and Tony wanted me to face competition and understand that you have to have confidence in yourself.
Yeah.
I think that was something he learned. So anyway, you asked me what happened. I ended up, after high school, looking at golf colleges, and I ended up going to where my Tony's brother, Walt, went to a place called Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo.
Okay.
So I went there, and I fell in love with it. I really wanted to get into engineering. My dad never graduated from high school, and he made me a promise that if I graduated from college, he'd go get his GED and graduate from high school. So I accepted.
Oh, wow.
And I ended up getting accepted into Cal Poly. They didn't know I was a golfer, but I got in there on my grades. And spent 4 years there and was an All-American there. But more importantly, I got a degree in computer science. And at that time, there were only 3 degrees in computer science being given. This was in 1972. And so I'm talking about 3 degrees from universities. So like Northwestern was one of them. And obviously from Silicon Valley and everything else, the having that degree with the space program going on, we were in high demand. Let's put it that way.
Wow.
I ended up going to work for at that time, a very small computer company called Hewlett Packard. At that time, HP was a instrument company. They did $10 million in the computer business, and mainly off of a disk drive. And I joined them to help create some of the new computers, and I stayed with them for 12 years. I left them as a general manager, and I had a chance to see the mini computer and the and PCs be born.
Mark,
so I had
what was Silicon Valley like back then?
It was a lot of cherry trees. There was a lot of innovation. There was, it was one of those things where creativity was being turned into reality because we had the space program. And one of the things that came into being, Cal Poly had a philosophy of learn by doing. In other words, you had to do something. In order to graduate, you had to build a project.
Okay.
My project was I modeled the U.S. economy on a computer. I was the first person to ever do that. And I worked with a university professor from Stanford and another one from Harvard, and we ended up creating the AZM method, which, by the way, was then adopted by the U.S. government, and it's now the basis for all the economic modeling that the U.S. government does.
That is so phenomenal.
So I was offered a job in D.C., of which I didn't want to go to snowy D.C. I ended up joining HP, but it was interesting in that at that time Intel was just starting, and there were a lot of other things that were happening. So it was interesting to see how innovation came along. Let's put it that way.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And you saw it from a technological standpoint, on all the advancements you guys were
every
making.
3 to 5 years, you had to reinvent yourself.
Wow.
I mean, we went from mini computers to PCs to networks, all the way down the line. In fact, it was interesting in 1990. Let me get this right. 1994. One of the groups I had a chance to got called by Jim Clark, and I was able to join Netscape Communications at that time Mosaic Communications as employee 25.
Wow,
which was really reinventing the world.
That is crazy.
But when you ask what it was like, we actually believed, and not egotistically, but we honestly believed we were on the verge of changing the world. I mean, going from punch cards to a mini computer was a big deal. I was part of a team of 3 people, and we developed a product called Image, which was the first 16-bit mini computer, 16-bit database management system, a database management system on a 16-bit computer. And it ended up becoming the most popular database management system in the 70s. And I say that we sold more of those in units and in dollars than all the competitors put together. That included IBM, everything else.
Is it imperative for people that want to make a change, think that they are going to change the world? And why I'm asking that, I think about our cannabis industry very specifically. And thanks so much for joining us here on the Veterans for Cannabis podcast today. We've got a great guest, Marc MATOZA, and this is part 1 of Marc's interview. Do you have to believe that you're going to make a change and change the world to have that kind of impact? I believe that, but do you think it's that way?
No, I'll tell you what it is, Joshua. And it's what I follow today. All I want to do is really help one person every day.
Okay.
I'm not trying to change the entire world. All I'm trying to do is make a couple lives better. And if I, as one person, can make a couple lives better around me, and everybody else can do that, it becomes a better world. And I was taught that philosophically by actually my economic professor in college, Dominic Perello. He's dead now, but he basically said our goal is just to help a few people. And that's all we were really trying to do. We were just trying to do something that we could use the skills we had to make people around us better. At HP, we called it the next bench syndrome. Help the person on the next bench become a better person, a better employee.
Wow.
And if it happens to take off, that's great. And I say that because Image took off. Database management in the 70s made the mini computer industry. It made the computer industry. I ended up leaving HP in I left them in 84. And I ended up going to Switzerland, and I got involved in the language translation business. And because I'd worked on some language translation at HP. What's interesting is we took that company public. I ended up making some money, but I knew all the problem with electronic dictionaries in those days with translation was you didn't have word lists. Without the word lists, you don't have the gas in the gas tank to do the translations.
All right, so help our listeners understand what a word list is, because I'm even a little fuzzy on that. What is a word list?
Take a look at a dictionary. It's a list of words.
Okay. So that's literally that's what it is.
Yeah, with a list of words, and then what it does is it has a definition with it. And so I knew all the dictionary vendors, so I got together with them, and at that time dictionaries were in a paper format. So jokingly, what I did was I said, I went to the basement of my house. Talk about being a geek. I went to the basement of my house, and I literally developed a system that was electronic dictionary. So that if you were typing, at that time they had WordPerfect, and you had Microsoft Word. So if you were typing in French and your native language was English, and you knew the word in French, but you didn't, in English, but you do it in French, you could hit a hotkey, type in the English word, it would give you the French word,
nice.
Conjugate the verb, normalize the noun, and drop it in the sentence. That was called Collins Online.
That is so awesome. Awesome.
And to do that, we built electronic dictionaries in 12 languages, and then we built bilingual references in 12 languages. And then, of course, because we could conjugate the verbs and nominalize the nouns, we created the first grammar checkers. And that was called Collins Online, done by MARC. It was later bought out by Rupert Murdoch. And that's where all the electronic dictionaries came from.
Which is fascinating. That is fascinating. It's fascinating where our podcasts take us. It's unbelievable. I love hearing these kind of stories because it's phenomenal on just the information that's out there and what people's life experiences are, and then how they get brought into something that makes us all come together.
Yeah,
when you're in California back then, was cannabis something that people utilize on a daily basis, or was it talked about? What was the atmosphere around cannabis then? And I know you guys have always been progressive.
Yeah, there's always the whole thing about cannabis is illegal, and there's always those that worry about things being illegal.
Right.
Let me put it to you this way: if they tested programmers in California for pot, there wouldn't be any Google, Facebook. There wouldn't be any company.
Sure, absolutely.
My gosh. Nobody worried about whether you smoke pot or not. In fact, a lot of us felt it was better to do that. And I didn't smoke pot at the time. And the reason for that is being a golfer. I didn't drink, I didn't smoke. When one putt can mean $5,000, you stay kind of focused. But I mean, the point is that we didn't really worry about it that much. I think the rest of the world did.
Sure.
I think all we saw it was that there weren't a lot of drunks. I mean, I didn't know of anybody who died from it. I didn't know anybody who caused an accident because of it. Let's put it that way.
Right.
And so the cannabis, but it wasn't looked at. There's a lot of talk about it potentially helping veterans and that type of thing, but there wasn't a lot of studies. So it was kind of live and let be. Let's put it that way. We had more things to worry about at that time.
Wow, that's so crazy. So we got just a couple minutes left here on the first part one of the segment here with Mark MATOZA. Mark, before we get into segment 2, tell us how you ended up in Florida, if you can do that in 1 or 2 minutes, and then we'll roll right into segment 2 and get our listeners really excited about the cannabis side.
Well, very quickly, I developed a technology, or I worked in developing a technology where you could take a videotape somebody and then animate it. So I developed the first golf swing analyzer in 1995, 1996, because I wanted to get back into golf, but I needed help. And so I developed that technology. We ended up creating a company called Swing Solutions, and the Golf Channel bought 10% of my company.
Wow.
So how I got to Florida was I was back here working with the Golf Channel, and we were actually using it on doing some programming. So I had an apartment back here, and I'd spend about a week or 2 a month back here working with the Golf Channel.
So exciting. I love closing on golf because we're going to start with the golf when we go to segment 2, and then we're going to roll right into cannabis. So thanks so much, listeners, for joining us here on the Veterans for Cannabis podcast. I'm your humble host, Joshua Littrell, and Mark MATOZA has been our extremely exciting guest today. This is segment 1. Tune in next time for segment 2. Mark, thanks so much for being our guest today.
Line over there, send the word over there, that the Yanks are coming, the drums coming everywhere. So prepare, say a prayer, send the word to beware. We'll be over, we're coming over, and we won't come back till it's over there, over there.